Hello, beautiful community. It's Genevieve here to welcome in and have a conversation in the realm of spirit. How to live a spiritual life in a practical world is one of my favorite topics of conversation. And through the different series that I'll offer here, will be topics to cover different areas of life and living, but how to really draw in and pull the sacred into our everyday living experience. And so thank you for the honor of sharing this video with me and allowing me to share this content with you. Today's topic of conversation is a question that I'm often asked in my own practice by students and clients. They are seeking the knowing and the know-how and the understanding around cultivating intuition and their relationship to their own intuitive abilities in their life. There's a lot of question, not only how to have intuition, how to use intuition, but also how to discern between the everyday mind and an intuitive message. And so I thought I would create a video here to share with you from my background and perspective from the years that I've been working with intuition, in hopes that it will help bridge some deeper understanding for you, as well as provoke some really good internal questions. People are often curious about how to develop a heightened sense of intuition. They're curious about intuitive abilities, how intuition works, as well as what to do with intuition when we receive these messages. There's an area around safety and knowing how to discern the messages as good, true, and beautiful. And I thought it would just be so nice to create a video here to help bring some of my backgrounds and teachings and the things that I've learned around this area of intuition, intuitive awareness. And so I welcome you into the conversation. I will open the space with a prayer and then we'll begin. Allies, ancestors, great mystery, those who walk the true, good, and beautiful line, we thank you so much for the time and space of this day and for the ability to be with one another and all of the ways that we're able to do that. And we thank you for the meeting of minds and hearts and for the space that will open here and the places inside of us that will grow through this conversation. I know that we are always learning so much from one another, and each of us has so many gifts to offer and unique ways of seeing and living and practicing. And we are cultivating understanding about this life and what we are doing here. And it's such a pleasure and honor to be able to share. And so I pray that I'm a hollow bone and a humble bone, and I can get under to understand what is needed most at this time around the conversation of intuition, intuitive abilities. I pray that we can speak here in a good way and offer things that are always of the good, true, and beautiful, that are most helpful, useful, and impactful for the community at large. I really pray that the space is open and that we can meet here together, even though we're on different sides and different places, in different areas of the world. I know that we are truly here connecting through minds and spirits and hearts. And so we thank Creator always for the opportunity to be in community with one another, to share our gifts and to learn many things. We thank you. The wheel is open. Okay. So there's this entire state of beingness and this way that we can be in the world where we have a heightened sensitivity to being aware in life. And this is what intuition is to me. It's the opportunity to feel tuned in on a deeper level to what is happening within us and around us. And so there's a sensitivity to the world that is different when we're in an intuitive state and when we're able to listen beyond the seen world and to receive the messages that are coming from the deeper place within, as well as the messages that do reach us from the mystery. And so we can have and be aware of the blessings and the gifts available to us at all times. And so what is intuition? How do we create intuition? How do we cultivate intuition? How do we follow our intuition? Our lives are not really meant to be this one-dimensional experience, right? We could very much live in a one-dimensional reality. However, our lives are really full of many experiences. and to have and live in the heart of awareness of what is actually happening, to be able to tune in and tap in and to feel our way through it on a deeper level can be really helpful, because it engages us into the deeper places of what life is, what the meaning is of life. And so to engage that every single day and to have this intuitive guidance system available to help us navigate life and go beyond the direction of the mind or the analytical thinking and deeper into what we are perceiving, what we are perceiving, what we are perceiving on that other level can be incredibly helpful. The beautiful thing is that everyone has intuitive awareness. Intuitive abilities are inherent in each and every one of us. Maybe on the most initial level, it's instinct, right? And so each of us can probably think of many times where we've just had an impulse or an instinct to make a quick snap decision to move back into the house and check the lights, or to take an exit off the highway when we thought we were going another direction. So on the most, beginning level, it's just following some instincts and impulses. We just get these feelings to, pick up the phone and call somebody that we have the feeling, and then it turns out they really needed our support that day. Some of us have the desire and the patience and the understanding to take from this level and to really develop these senses and this sensitivity into that place of using intuition every single day. The development of our intuitive connection is a process that happens over time. It takes practice, it takes awareness, it takes discipline, but it's possible. It's possible for us to be able to cultivate this. And so that's a really exciting gift, is that each of us can, with our patience and our time and energy, direct our resources in that direction. The difference between intuition and the intellectual thinking is that intuition is an immediate sense of knowing without some conscious reasoning. It's a spontaneous awareness that we tend to have, that instinctive feeling, that information comes from intuition. It doesn't have an emotional base to it. It just crosses our consciousness in a very clear and direct way. Sometimes we don't know why we're feeling that way, or thinking it's a good idea to take this exit rather than the other one, or to put our vacation off a week. But some part of us receives the message, the information coming through as truth. So our intuition is our intuitive voice, is the voice of our soul. And it's imperative that we learn to recognize the sound of it and to bring awareness to it and learn to trust it and acknowledge it. So because it doesn't have an emotional base, it doesn't feel or sound like the same voice that might come through when we're feeling fearful about something or a little bit scared to try something. It's a clear knowing. It doesn't mean we always follow it or take the direction of the intuition, but when it comes through, it's a clear knowing. For instance, say we've been engaged in a career or job that recently has really come to our awareness that we're no longer happy. And certain things within that job has been showing us along the way that it's time for us to transition and move out. And then one day you wake up and you just get this clear sense of knowing that now's the time. Now's the time to make the transition. Our analytical, logical mind might line up many reasons why it may or may not be the time. It may try to process that out, but it's that feeling in the body that something says it's now. And then we learn how to follow that awareness and how to take action based on it. But listening to that voice, recognizing that voice, knowing that it's imperative, part of our life is to follow that voice. That's the piece we really want to just begin to practice with. Because intuition is a constant state of wisdom. It's that guidance from within. It's when we are really open and we're listening to our awareness and we're able to discover things about life beyond our knowing, beyond what we already know or might be available to us now, beyond our logic. So because it's this constant source of wisdom, It's a simple matter of tuning into it. So if we imagine intuition, intuitive ability, like a volume, okay? And because we're all built and we have an inherent nature with this, sometimes the volume's just turned way down. We hear it faintly, it's subtle. It's a soft voice within us. And sometimes when our mind is overly distracted, or we have a lot of stress or drama in our lives, or other things that are requiring our attention, we don't know how to clear out the mind enough, then that will overshadow this internal voice that is working to speak with us. And so over time, we learn how to tune in, to focus, to get grounded, and start to notice the intuitive language that's always there. And so we work with the mind to quiet it out so that we can begin to turn the volume of intuition up. So it's just a matter of quieting down one aspect so we can, hear the other aspect in a new and different way. So we want to be able to see beyond just what's in front of us. We want to be able to listen beyond what people are saying or what's being said. We want to be able to sense and feel beyond just, what is fluctuating around us. We want to be able to follow our senses to this much deeper place. If you ever had an experience meeting someone new or being in front of someone, they may be saying or talking, or their body language is saying one thing to you, but then you're starting to interpret, you're starting to feel through intuitive message how you actually feel around this person. You're starting to sense or feel something else there than just what you're seeing with your eyes or what you're hearing with your ears. That is receiving intuitive messages. And so we receive intuition in different ways. We have our body, our mind, and our spirit. Okay, so our body has responses. Our body is a source of intuitive information. Our body has senses that it's receiving this information from that higher place. Sometimes when people are receiving intuitive messages or an intuition is coming through, they feel goosebumps all over their body. Sometimes they feel a rush of energy and aliveness, a vitality that just came through. It's an inspiring, it's an energy. Sometimes it's a feeling of upliftment, or I just woke up, I felt something new or different. Then there's the mind. There's a difference between the changing emotions and the intuitive feelings. On the mental level, intuition comes through our dreams, our daydreams, our aha moments. It's when we hear something and we recognize that as truth. Maybe we're in a workshop or in a yoga class, or we're watching something and all of a sudden something hits us through the mind. A quote was shared, or a piece about yogic philosophy, or even something from this workshop, and something in you goes, that feels right. That's your intuition waking up inside of you to let you know that something's in alignment for you. There's the spiritual level of intuition, and that's the mystical knowing. That's the glimpse into the true reality of our experience. It's spiritual insight. It's insight into the universal consciousness. It's where we gain access to information on topics that we're curious about. For instance, say I'm wondering how I can help bring healing to the world during the pandemic, to help bring some healing to people's fluctuations in their emotional states. And I'm just curious how I can be a contributor or helper to this. So maybe in my morning journal or meditation, I pose the question. I write something down and I decide to ask that question. And then I go off and I pick up my drum and I begin drumming and breathing, or I begin meditating, or finding some way, in a spiritual practice. And as I'm visioning, or as I'm meditating, or as I'm drumming, this piece just comes to me, and I have a vision of myself out there offering a rattling prayer to the world, or offering a Reiki healing energy to the collective. Something comes through in the spiritual way in that meditation. It's showing me, it's letting me know how I can communicate, how I can offer my services with the world. And that came to me through meditation, drumming, rattling prayer, shamanic journey. And so we might receive it through our body. Somebody might say to us, I have an opportunity for you. And I don't know if you've been looking for a new job. However, something just came up and I thought of you. And I think you might be interested in A, B, and C as a job. And all of a sudden your body gets the goosebumps. There's this inner knowing that something is connecting here. Your intuition is notifying you that, that feels in alignment. Or we're sharing a story with somebody and, all of a sudden we go off into a vision or a dream. We're having a conversation with a friend and we're having some lunch. And then all of a sudden we have a daydream. We drift off and we have an image. We see an image of ourselves doing some beautiful healing work. And we see ourselves in the park with our drum and offering community prayers and gathering people for this work. And that came through our mind, or we're in our meditation again and we receive that message that way. So we receive intuitive information in different ways, and each of us is very unique. It's not going to be the same. Some of us are clairaudient, and so we tend to hear messages coming through. We'll just hear this little voice that says, I think today would be a good day to call your mom. Or I think today would be a good day to go pick that up, at the store where you left it. And then you go to that store and you run into somebody you've been looking to see for a really long time. So sometimes we receive messages very clear, through the clairaudience. Sometimes we're clairvoyant and we receive messages through vision. We'll have a dream in our sleeping dreams, or we'll have a waking dream when we're up in the world and daydreaming, and we have a vision of something and the message was received in that way. I had a yoga student once who would come and take class, and she never thought she had intuitive abilities. And then when she would relax at the end of class and I would play the gong, which is a tool for taking a journey, and she would deeply meditate and kind of empty herself out. At that point in time, her grandmother would start to come through and give her messages in her vision. She would see the image or face of her grandmother, and then her grandmother would write things out, and they were actually warnings about some things her daughter were involved in. They were messages, to kind of help her be aware of what was happening. And to her total surprise, when she addressed it with her daughter, those were things that were actually happening. She would have big visions during that time of Shavasana, but no other time in her life did she have those visions. So two things were happening. One, intuition was meeting her at a spirit level in that kind of spiritual setting. And two, she was receiving the messages through her clairvoyance, through her visions, through her visual nature. The other way that we receive intuition is clairsentience. And so that's when we start to feel and sense things. That's my strongest form of receiving intuition. My kids or people around me will often hear me say, I just have a sense about that. I'm just getting this feeling. I just have this sense that I need to do this today, or I'm just getting this sense this is the right time, or I'm getting a feeling. I'm more clairaudient, clairsentient than clairvoyant. One is not better than the other. It's just we're open to receiving in different creative ways. Okay. So what's the process, right? So how do we get from this just having basic instinct to being able to read things on an intuitive level, to being able to call in or activate our intuition? So there's maybe point A is I just have some instincts occasionally about things, and I sometimes follow them or not, but I can feel those instincts. And maybe the other point is, actually being an intuitive in life. And like I do in my work, I do readings for people. I use my intuition for healing, for helping others heal as a medium. And so I have a very heightened sense of intuition that I can use to help healing and alleviate suffering. And then there's somewhere in between. There's, you can live where that's not so heightened, or your sensitivity isn't that high, where not everybody wants to know things about other people's lives or have that heightened state of sensitivity to the world or what is happening, but they would like to be connected on a deeper level to that sense of knowing, right? And so we really can't talk about developing intuition without addressing the situation of the mind. And so I'm going to give you an example. If we think of the mind like a car, like the engine of a car, it's always a car that's always running without a shut off, right? So if the mind is like a car and the car is turned on and it's just running and there's no shut off switch, right? If it's left undisciplined, if it's left on its own, if there's no shut off, it's just going to keep going. It's going to keep going until it runs out of steam, right? And so when left undisciplined, the mind has the tendency to steer itself. So if we put that car on a road and it's running and we don't know where the shut off is, and let's say we leave it undisciplined, so we're not in the driver's seat, the car is acting on its own, it will steer itself in its own direction. And if we have a bunch of cars on the road with engines running and steering themselves in the own direction, things will be really chaotic. There's no destination, there's no direction. And so at some point, this is like what the mind is doing. The mind is constantly directive. It wants to feed us a lot of information. It's fight or flight. It's based on survival. It stores the evidence and history of all of our past. There's a lot going on. And if we're not in the driver's seat of the mind and that engine is just constantly running and steering itself wherever it wants, we're not going to be very self-directed. We're not going to be able to get to a deeper place of quiet and stillness for intuition because the mind is in control and the mind has nowhere to go. It's just off running wherever it needs to for that day. So we must get in the driver's seat and take some control of how to direct the mind so that it can serve us rather than be in control of us. Okay, so we learn how to switch the gears. We must know how to control the gears of the mind so that they function and can be a functional support that are working on our behalf. Okay, so we learn how to kick the mind into neutral. In yoga, we call it shunya. It's that still point. It's zero. It's where nothing's happening. Everything just comes to a quiet place, a neutral place. And so with discipline and training, we can refine the mind. We can refine our senses. We can refine the mind to a point where we can begin to rely on our senses, where our emotions are under control, our mind is under control, and it is there when we need it, because we need the mind very much. We need our intellect when we're working and living in this practical world. But if it's always in charge of everything and off on its own without any clear support or direction of where we actually need it to go, right, the mind can tend to get chaotic. And so through practices like meditation, breath work, breathing, walking in nature, stillness, drumming, rattling, even dancing and movement, we're looking for a way to empty out our container, right? So the mind is a container that stores a lot of things. We can't turn up the volume intuition if the volume of the mind is at its highest point. And so the idea is finding a unique method that, one, you feel good about. It doesn't feel like a chore, you have to, but you can't wait to get to that space where things start to settle down. So the mind is very reactive, and then we start breathing 10 or 15 breaths, and it starts to slow down. We draw in the parasympathetic nervous system, the brakes. We start to slow everything down, or we put this sound healing on, the singing bowls or the gong or the mantras, that the yogis chant. And all of a sudden the mind starts to quiet, hollow out. And we do it as long as we need to until we start to feel like we're reaching that place of stillness. The drum is a really easy tool when we're beating it. It has, that beat is a way of shifting us from one reality to the other. So is the rattle. It creates a trance-like state. So any path that gets you into the space where you're able to breathe and clear it out. And so in the beginning, it might take a very consistent practice of finding a tool like this to discipline and refine your mind so that in your daily life, it's not so much in charge of it's not the loudest part of you. Okay. And so that's one aspect of it. It requires those of us with heightened levels of intuition who are really looking to connect in. We spend time developing this, the meditative mind. And so 3 minutes of deep breathing a day or 5 minutes of quiet stillness turning all sensory off, all lights and everything off. We completely desensitize. Or we lay in water, we lay in the bath, and we just feel our body floating in the water. So whatever the avenue or the path is to learning how to shut the sensory systems down and to just be in the state of stillness, will start to open the space for that intuition to start increasing. We'll be able to connect with and hear ourselves on a higher plane. A client was saying to me the other day, what if I don't have the time in my life with children and a full-time job and working so much to create space for meditation or yoga or these sorts of things? If that is true for you, or you want to just take it into your regular daily lives, you want to take it off the mat or out of the house, and you want to practice this more frequently or often, I have a really simple and easy way that I can help you start tuning in on these deeper and other planes, other than just what's happening in front of you out in the world. It's called the Buddhist mind, the observing mind. And so what I have learned to be true is that when you step outside your house, let's say, and you're going to get in the car to rush the kids to school or to get off to work or to get to the store, whatever you're doing, right? When you first step out, your eyes look up and your brain starts to get activated. There's a lot of things that are happening, things you're remembering and thinking about. Your brain is scanning life. If you could take even just a few moments before you walk down the driveway or the sidewalk, open the car door, and if you just stand there and take a deep breath. And if you just look up, my suggestion is that you start to learn how to scan life. And so you become observant of life. So rather than life is just happening and you're a human doing and you're moving from one place to the next and the mind is super active and you can't really listen to these inner peaceful, states and messages that are wanting to guide you. The idea is just look up. Find something to focus on, or use your eyes, your awareness to just kind of start looking around. And what do I notice? There's the hummingbird, the light on the trees, the color of the sky, the ground beneath my feet and what that might feel like. Maybe it's moist in the air today and you can feel that on your skin. Maybe there's droplets of rain on the flower bush that sits next to your front door and you're noticing how beautiful the colors of the sun rays through the water is. So we take a moment or more than a few moments to just stop, look up and observe. This is that tuning in on a deeper level. It's so simple and easy and accessible at all times to be more present and engaged in life than we are. So it requires slowing down, looking up. I always like to include a deep breath, looking around and noticing. We want to notice. What do I notice? It doesn't have to be some epiphany or, if we're looking to just develop our, deeper senses, our sensibility in this life, it's not like we have to be in a meditation and some big, huge, godly thing came through to us. It could be as simple as we're just noticing who's walking down the street and we get quiet and we learn to observe and be really present. And then we just feel this rush of energy in our body because we're in that state of presence. And so my highest recommendation, or you're washing the dishes and at first you're rushing and trying to get things put away and get yourself to bed or the kids off to bed, and you just stop yourself. You take a deep breath and then you start to feel the water on your skin. Maybe you smell the smell of the soap on the dishes. And you slow down and you just observe where you are in this time and space, and you breathe. And you bring your awareness and your presence to this moment in time. We can do this in ordinary life all over the place. I'm not someone who came in this world at a slow pace. So I can really relate to those of you out there who move very quickly through life, who have a lot of things simultaneously going on that draw and call your attention. I've lived my life like that for a really long time in the automatic sympathetic sympathetic nervous system. And I have learned practices and ways to slow way down and to find these moments in time, even if it's just 30 seconds of your attention or a minute or two here or there, where I look up and notice and pay attention. At the traffic light, I look around and I take a deep breath and I ask myself, what do I feel about what's around me? If I walk into a crowded room or a social event, I don't just go into the crowd and let life hit me. I take a moment and I enter things slowly. I take a moment to bring awareness. I look around. I notice what I see. I notice what I'm feeling. I notice what I'm sensing. There's nothing much I ever have to do with that. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It's not about understanding. It's just that moment of here I am in this space, and this is what I'm experiencing, feeling, sensing. Okay. And so you can take the practice to the mat or the altar, the meditation space, to nature, to your creative space. You can also take it out into the world and really start to work with your observation of life and the slowing down and relaxing into it and finding moments of deep breath and just what do I see? One of my other practices is looking for beauty. There's so much beauty around us all the time. Things are growing and changing right in front of our eyes, under our feet, around us in the air, and we're off in a million places at once, and we lose our relationship to this magic and this mystery that is constantly and always happening in everyday life. And so something I teach and what I've done for myself is to always remember. So I'm walking out and I'm feeling and experiencing life on these much deeper levels. And that keeps my intuition going, keeps me tuned into things. It keeps me feeling and sensing through life. Okay. So at first, what is subtle and quiet will grow into a stronger and more noticeable feeling or sense or, message. It will become louder. So just like all things, if you practice and you practice with, sincerity and a genuine nature, it will change, right? We will become, I don't want to use the word better, but it will become, a bigger part of our lives. And so that sixth sense, you can really train yourself into having an experience with it. What I've learned about intuition is it really wants to work with us and it really wants to benefit my life. And so the times that I've gone against it and I had this feeling, maybe I should close up, work 10 minutes early today, and I've gone against that. And then, there's something that's happened because I didn't do that. Or, I'm sure we can each think of an experience where we had this gut feeling or this instinct and we didn't do it and it turned out a certain way. And so we just learn to acknowledge and recognize when we are and when we aren't following this. But we can turn these instincts into deep, intuitive knowing. We can be more direct with those messages. We can pay attention to how it's touching our body, our mind, our spirit, also how we receive it, clairaudient, clairvoyant, or clairsentient. So just all of this awareness will put us in the space of being in relationship to intuition. So we all have intuitive ability, and some of us use it incredibly well. And some of us actually have a lot of fear around receiving intuitive information. I've met with a lot of people who remember being young and getting senses about things, or even having like very direct hits about people or their health or their lives. And that was scary, right? There was no guidance or mentorship around why they're receiving those messages or what to do with them or where they're even coming from. And so it was a place of fear, and they learned to shut that off. Or somebody told them, talk them out of that, knowing, oh, you don't really know what you're talking about. Just listen to me. That more authoritative, parenting or role modeling, where we stop listening to ourselves at some point. Okay. Okay. There's a difference between just working with this level of intuition on a daily basis and actually intentionally calling in allies and spirits and totems from the unseen world to work with us and bring us the messages and the help that we need, either for our own lives or for the work that we do with others. And so this video, I'm not going to focus on that today, but I will do that in the next video where we will talk about allies, spirits, making connection, working with that, that's on a different level. And so if intuition feels better to you to just kind of stay in this field of, I just like to feel and sense and know a little bit more about what's happening than just the ordinary world. I'd like to follow my own instincts and listen to what's coming through. I'd like to have the wherewithal, to follow that direction. So to summarize, intuition's usually an immediate impulse, message, energy. It comes right through. There's not an analytical brain that's connected to it. We usually feel it as something either in our body, like we have a surge of energy, or there's some goosebumps on our body, or something just feels alive, or we feel it in our mind. Something in us feels that as truth. We just know that that's true. Something we just heard or experienced that just felt right. And we can't always explain with logic why. We just know that that's right. Sometimes we say no to something and we can't explain why, but we just say, I'm getting this feeling that I shouldn't be doing that today. That's intuition. We also receive it through spirit in our meditations, our shamanic journeys, and other ways. We'll receive very direct messages. Also, in summary, there are those of us who are clairaudient and we hear messages, clairsentient we feel, and clairvoyant we see. One is not better than the other. We just have different ways of receiving this information. It's like a volume knob that you can turn up, and with practice and discipline and effort, you can create a very high level of intuition in your life. You can create a high sensitivity and use of it, or you can just keep it as, I just like to have these instincts about life. But intuition is the link between us as the human and the divine mind. So we get to really access this deep intuitive part of ourselves, and then we learn to trust it. So that's another piece that clients are always asking about. I don't know how to trust if that's the right message. When it comes through in a direct and clear way, it doesn't mean in this moment in time we have the resources to follow that message or the courage to quit our job and move on. It just means something just shared with us a really big knowing about our lives. It leads us to a more fulfilled, joyful, healing place because it comes from source energy. So the more willing we are to trust it, and also a major piece of increasing intuition is the acknowledgement of. Every time we acknowledge, oh, I took that path and it led me something good, something just told me to say yes, and we acknowledge that that happened, it's like a little deposit in that trust bank around intuition. I woke up today and I was thinking of my very best friend and I haven't seen her in a long time. And I just felt like I should call her. And then the phone rang an hour later. That, we're connected, that feeling of knowing, oh, I received the message she was thinking of me. When we acknowledge that, another deposit in that trust around intuition. Okay. So the more willing you are to trust it, the louder it gets and the more pronounced it will become in your life. The messages will go from more of a subtle nature to more of a direct and obvious nature. So with observation and reflection and quieting down and some stillness, we're able to become receptive, really good receivers, very receptive. But it requires this humility, right? The ability to listen, to take some instruction, to take those messages in. The last piece about intuition that I have found to be very true, and people ask, it's this deeper level of listening. Those of us with a much higher ability around, the intuitive nature tend to be deep listeners. And so we can practice we can practice in our daily life when our 4-year-old is speaking to us and they're sharing a really big story about the day. I had the most amazing day at school. I found a caterpillar. And usually our mind is going, right? Like it's starting to want to interject or talk over or say something. And instead, if we can develop a method of just, again, taking a deep breath, hollowing out, meaning we get empty and we really listen to what's being said, we get into the experience of another. We are empathic. We can feel and resonate the experience. We're really right here. We're very present. And we can really become receptive of what we're receiving. We're on a deeper level of listening. We really can. This also increases that level of intuition. We're tuning into something far and beyond just the person's words. We're actually getting in the experience of. And that's what being and living in intuition on a daily basis feels like. Last thing, I know I've said that a few times, but clients also often say to me, I'm afraid to cultivate intuition because I don't want to walk around the world knowing more, and inappropriately knowing things about other people, or being even more empathic than I am and picking up on things. There's ways to develop intuition where we are not, it's like how do I explain it? I walk around life with a nice openness and being tuned in to, what's happening around me on a deeper level. But it's not like everybody I come across in public, I'm able to intuit, even though I do readings for a living and I get into that space and read for people's lives. When I'm out in the world, I pull it in and I have my own boundaries with it so that I'm not standing in the line with the person in front of me, knowing all of the details of their life. So there's a way to have boundaries. There's a way to pull and rein that in. And so when I get into doing intuitive work and readings with people, I have a very specific ceremony that I do to open the space so that I'm calling in my full intuitive ability for the sake of this reason. So there's a rattling prayer. I invite all the allies in. I hollow myself out. I get the hell out of the way. I set the sacred intention that I'm here to read and see the broader perspective for this person's life for healing. So it's a ceremony. There's an entryway into that ceremony where I'm specifically using my intuition for the healing and sake of another. And then there's an exit. At the end of that reading, I close the space. I use language and words to do that. I close up that space. I close the ceremony. I release it. And then I leave that world. So once the reading is over and we're saying our goodbyes, I'm not picking up more details about their life. So I can go into more teaching about that on here. I really look forward to being able to offer more information about the many different forms and ways that we can use intuition and connect with the spirit world. But for today, I thought this might be just a nice introduction, and hopefully it answered some of your questions or the things that you've thought about. Feel free to leave me a message if you have questions in the comments section. And also you can always go over to sacredhealingway.com, my website, and there's more information on there. And about events that will be coming up, and also some of my one-on-one work. And so that's it for today. And I thank you so much again, community, for sharing this time and space with me. And I'll close it with a prayer. Allies, ancestors, great mystery creator, I thank you for the ability to have my mind and my heart, as well as my intuition, to be open enough and courageous enough to share here out in the public world and with people who are and will be receptive to receiving what is being offered. And I thank you so much for all of the technology that has come together to make this possible, so that we can bridge our learning and growing and sharing and understanding across boundaries of time and space. We thank you so much for our ability to connect and reconnect to our own inherent gifts, and to know how to talk about them with community so that we can share our practices and share the purpose and share our experiences. Allies, we thank you. And I close this beautiful wheel, this conversation today. We say, Aho. Aho. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.